The purpose of war shouldn't be, in my opinion, to kill people. It should be to achieve an ends. And a lot of times that does require killing.
My thoughts about the Iraq War. In an ideal world, the situation never would have come up because Saddam Hussein and the whole thing would have been dealt with in the first Gulf War. In the first Gulf War, there was very clear, obvious cause for us to be there. He'd invaded Kuwait. That was clear purpose to be there. Currently, not so much. I can understand the war in Afghanistan currently.
I think there's two reasons why the US spends so much on the military. Make sure other countries are in line with the world economy, the capitalist world economy, mostly to stimulate the domestic economy and develop the high-tech sector.
Everyone wants to fly and go fast, and those are things that all little kids like. And as a little kid, you're interested in the excitement. And
I've thought about what it would be like to join the military, but I haven't seriously considered it. I haven't considered it as an option for my future.
The influence on me going into the military was definitely mostly a mass media appeal. The promise of adventure and the honor, dignity, like immaterial promises.
The idea that every guy would like to think that he's good in combat comes from society. I mean, it's a generalization. Not every guy in the world wants to fight. I'd like to think. I think every guy would like to think that he's on that. Almost every guy would like to think that, given the opportunity, given the training and the opportunity, that he could be like a badass.
One of the big appeals to playing first-person shooter games was to network it together and shoot your friends' characters. It's just like when you were a little kid out playing in the woods, tag or whatever. You know who their characters are and you can go hunt them down. And I suppose a large part of that is gloating after you've shot their character. Some of them, their character just stops moving, falls down. The more violent ones will have a little fake sprite particle splatter of blood or something. The character may dissolve into parts. Certainly as a little kid, you're not thinking about, oh, this is actual combat, I'm going to have to hurt people, and there are going to be people shooting at me. It gets the point across in Mario when the little mushroom gets squished and disappears. That's non-violent, it serves its purpose. Well, I know there was a very controversial recruiting technique of the Army making their own video game. There's already enough criticism about, violent first-person shooter video games out there. Specifically targeting into that market as a recruiting tool is questionable, I suppose. A lot of people do try to customize their character proportions to either look something like them or something like themselves that fits that particular universe. You have what the programmers, the animators have put in there, but only what's been programmed in. One sequence of action followed by another sequence of action. One sequence of action followed by another sequence of action. I don't know if I identify with any particular group. I tend to think they're all idiots. Or have some part of something right and something else wrong and sort of grab bag kind of thing. I know on a lot of issues I do tend to lean Democrat, and I blame a lot of that on a lot of the reading I did as a little kid. But then as I grow older, I sort of reread a lot of those books that has a very libertarian. He comes off as slightly insane.
I think honestly, like that is the one thing that will unite humanity. There is almost nothing that can make people see what they have in common. There's so many cultures and nationalities and religions throughout the world. There's nothing that will make us see that we're all the same, except for something other than people. And I think the only thing that there possibly could be is aliens. Like an evil alien, like we will enslave your species invasion is the only thing that will bring us together, honestly.
I try to keep updated with, you know, current issues and what the hot buttons and stuff are. Politically, I'm sort of constantly evolving issue by issue. I do tend to think we could do with a little bit less overall large government. As far as I can tell, every time they try to fix something, you know, there's causes some other problem, which is going to happen no matter what. There is no perfect solution for any problem just because there are so many different people.
I read the LA Times every day. I listen to NPR in the car constantly. It's my #1 preset. I read political and informational websites. I read everything from CNN, which kind of sucks, online, to the New York Times, to the BBC. I tend to think they're all idiots.
Admittedly, I know I don't have all of the information, and a lot of it is, you know, from questionable sources.
I don't think they always have the best information, but I do think, I don't believe we should live in a society without a military now.
The Taliban were, I believe, quite clearly shielding and sponsoring terrorists. I've been kind of trying to define terror for a long time in my head, and the most I can come up with is that it's specifically aimed at civilian targets rather than military targets. It's intentionally disregarding long-established, I guess, rules of war, even though a lot of people will argue, there's that old saying, all's fair in love and war. There are certain things that you don't do if for no other reason, because if you start doing them, that's reason for your enemy to start. You know, things like POW rules, Geneva Convention rules of war, things like that.
There's awful stories about sort of groups of guys like going, like storming into houses, killing people who don't fit, killing people who don't deserve to be killed, raping young Iraqi women, and that's sort of the and they all claim in court when they're all court-martialed, they claim I was following orders. This was what we were told to do. This was a family that we were told to go against, and I'd like to think that I would be able to say, to be able to step back in the situation and say, no, I was following orders. That's completely not right. If I were to come home and be discharged, I'd like to think that I'd be one of the people who speak out against the war and who tell Americans what it's actually like there, so they can get a different perspective than what the administration is saying and what the Pentagon is saying and what the media might be saying. And I like to think that at some point I would have a voice that would be heard.